Welcome back to another episode of Boom or Bust, your home for NFL Draft Talk. I'm your host, Terry, and today talking about the defensive ends in the 2019 draft. At the end of this episode, we'll be doing the real grade of the Cleveland Browns. Going back to the 2016 draft, as always, go to the link in the description section, and you can get a link to the notes on the other players and more detailed notes about these players. All right, so with that being said, going to kind of look at the top four guys. I think there's four big names in this group, and then maybe talk about one or two guys that I also enjoy. So talking about the defensive ends, I would say this class has a lack of lean, as I would say, and that is kind of typical, especially nowadays, where we talk about the ability to lean around the edge when you see defensive end or someone turning a corner underneath a tackle, kind of running that hoop to the quarterback, and the ability to get low and get under and bend your hips. That's what we're talking about with body lean. And I would say a lot of these guys lack that, so we'll get into that. But starting off with Nick Bosa, this is one of my draft philosophies personally, is that I don't do tape from last year. I try to avoid it as much as I can. I try to go 100% from this year, but then you get a situation where guys was injured or was suspended or end up quitting the team, whatever. Then you kind of have to look at last year's tape, and I caution it, and I don't really do a full write-up with Nick Bosa because a lot can happen in that year. Being around the game, I know that a lot can change in that off season. It could make or break it. And so you're talking about that last game of the season and that first game of the new season. That's not 1 week between each other. That's almost over 7 months. And so you're talking about transforming your body, transforming your mind as a player. All types of things can happen, and you could be a completely different player, better or worse. And so that's why I don't do last year's tape. Now with Nick Bosa, you kind of got a special situation. The younger brother of a recent prospect who's an NFL star, same game type, same position, same body type. You kind of understand what you're getting, and then he's a guy that's been pretty consistently dominant since he's been playing. But here's the tricky part. So I watched one game of him this year, and I thought, wow, absolutely elite, dominant, amazing. And it wasn't against top competition, good competition, but not Big Ten competition. And then I put on a game from last year against Big Ten competition, and I thought, wow, okay, not as good. And so do I contribute that to the better competition? Do I contribute that to he was just better this year? He's a better version than he was last year. Which way do I go with that? And that's why I try to avoid doing last year's tape. And so what I saw with Bosa is that he was absolutely dominant this year, and his ability to lean around the corner was amazing. And that's one thing I would say that Joey lacked. And so Joey, as far as the ability to hold a gap, to stack and shed linemen in the run game, to counter with power moves, to, convert speed to power, all these different things, to use violent hands, good technique, all these things he had. But I would say he wasn't the best of athletes. Now, I don't think Nick is an amazing athlete. I think Nick is a tick above Joey as an athlete, to the point where at the time I was very big with, I don't think he's a stand-up rusher. And everybody was like, yeah, what are you talking about? Joey Bosa can pass rush from the outside. I'm like, I don't think he has that ability. I think he's best with his hand in the dirt, and I actually think he's a better eye front DN. And that's what he ended up being. And so with Nick, though, I do think he can stand up. I do think he has those movement skills. And from what I saw in 2018, from the small glimpse, he really had some bend to him around the edge that I didn't see Joey with. But I would have liked to see it more times than just that one time. So just going off that small stuff, like, yes, he absolutely looks amazing. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't know how consistent that would have been. So it's kind of tough to, mark up Nick Bosa this year, but he's a amazing package. And so how much will the injury affect that? We don't know. A lot of question marks for me personally. All right. So next up, we got Rashod Gary from Michigan. And Rashod Gary, he's the first one I bring up when I talk about a lack of lean. He's good. He's a real good player, I think, and he's got a lot of good prospects to him. But at the same time, I worry about his production on the edge. And I mean, coming around the corner of a tackle. Cause there's guys that they can play, they can counter back inside and they can, rush upfield and then try to bull rush a tackle into a person. They can do a lot of stunts and stuff and they can be good that way. But as far as just winning on the edge, that's where you got the real money pass rushers. And for Gary, I like his hands. I think his hands is violent. I think he's got a lot of power in his hands, but I haven't seen him win on the edge as much as I would like to, as far as him running that arc and that hoop to the quarterback and making a play. For me, he doesn't lean enough. He's a little too high. And so what happens when you don't lean and when you don't point your feet to the quarterback, as they say, you start to get ridden out the pocket. And so that hoop becomes a little too big where you miss the quarterback. And I think I've seen that with Gary too many times. Now there's times, of course, like I said, where he can counter back and he could play bully ball and get to the quarterback that way. But as far as straight up rush on the edge, I've always seen him kind of get pushed too far wide of the quarterback. Now there's flashes of him putting it together, getting that good lean, getting that good dip and making it to the quarterback, but it's not consistent enough. Now in the run game, I like him. I mean, he's got a real good motor. Again, violent hands, can really stack and shed linemen. He can hold his gap, get off blocks and then make a play. A lot more athletic than you would think for his size. So I like a lot of his intangibles, a lot of his, traits. But as far as that pass rushing ability, I don't know. Now, despite that, I would say he could stand up. And a lot of these DNs, the evaluation is, okay, can they convert to a pass rusher, stand up pass rusher? And I think he can. I think if you get him into the season 10, 15 pounds lighter than he is now, then that's probably your best bet. But I think he moves very well, even if he was playing at 280. But I would still try to get that weight down. But then you just got to work on him getting lower because, again, it's kind of complicated, but there's body lean and there's body dip. Body lean is the ability to get your hips pointed and your feet pointed and to turn that corner and use the weight of the tackle, but also getting underneath them to ride that tight line to the quarterback. Body dip is the ability to sink your hips low enough to get under that tackle and able to get on track. And I think he needs to work on both of them. Both of them are just average right now. But if you want him to be that pass rushing dynamo, you're going to really have to work on his ability to lean around the corner. All right. So then next up is Farrell Ferrell. I forgot how he wants you to pronounce it, but from Clemson. And this guy's been on the radar since freshman year. He just built like a man child. And now we're here and he's still a man child. And you put on the tape and that's one of the guys that you see and like, yes, he's perfectly ready to go play some football, plug and play. And that's what I seen on tape. I mean, I don't think he has anything elite about his game, but I think everything about his game is great. From his ability to even stand up, even at his size. Cause once you get into the 260 range, it's like, okay, should this guy be standing up? I think his ability to stand up, move in space, and still play the edge, absolutely great. I think his ability to set the edge on the end, his ability to hold his gap, to get off blocks and play the run game, his ability to pass rush, his ability to counter, his ability to run the hoop on the edge. All of it is exactly where you want it to be. Now with him, I've seen enough times that he can lean and win on the edge. I do think he's a little bit inconsistent as the game goes on. Sometimes he gets a little tall. He's taller, so he stands up a little bit and it's harder for him to win on the edge. But I think he's good enough to where he can threaten the tackle because, as I was saying earlier, if you don't, there's other ways you can win. But if you don't have the threat of winning on the edge, like just on a straight run the arc, then the tackle knows there's one less thing he has to worry about. So he knows that you're not going to be able to attack his shoulder, his upfield shoulder and win. Then I could just get ready for the inside counters. I could get ready for the stunts and I could focus on my post rather than having to worry about you beating me right off the edge because I know I can win. And so I think Cleveland has at least enough talent on the edge to where a tackle's not going to be able to just get comfortable and to get comfortable and worry about the inside move. I think he has enough polish on the edge to where you have to worry about that. And overall, he's just really good with his hands. And so even if he comes directly at you, not necessarily on the edge, he has the ability to quick swim and quick disengage and just completely erase you anyway. So, overall, just a really, really, really great prospect. I do think he could stand up and be an outside rusher. And you hear a lot of talk about his leadership on the team. So I think he's, for me, definitely, probably my number 2 behind Nick Bosa. All right. So then from there, you got Montez Sweat. A lot of people are excited about him. And so when you talk about a frame, this is what it looks like. That's the frame you want when you're just talking about the build of a pass rusher and the traits of a pass rusher. He's got a really long first step. I wouldn't say he's necessarily explosive, but he looks every bit of 6'6". And so he can really get that long first step and cover some ground. And so you might not think he's as fast as he is, but before you know it, he'll be moving. And so all those rolled into one package, that's what some coaches love. They love a piece of clay that they can mold. And I'll tell you right now, Montez Sweat to me is 5 times better in the run game than he is the pass game. I think he is really, really good at setting the edge. He's a lot more stout on the edge than people might think when you look at his lean frame. But he holds his gap well. He squeezes the gap well. He's not afraid to take on kick out blocks. He plays really rugged and he's a big part of stopping the run. In the pass game, it's a lack of lean. I mean, and I've seen a few instances where he was actually able to put it together and get around that corner pretty devastatingly. And so there's definitely flashes of him putting together. But again, he's really tall. So just getting his body used to threatening that edge or at least something. I think the big thing with Montez, I mean, there's a lack of lean, but there's also, he doesn't have a plan when he's pass rushing. And some people might think you just go out there and do stuff. No, you have to have a plan going into the play. And that plan develops over the course of a game as you start to see what they're good at, what they're bad at, what they like to try to do to you, all these different things, even how the quarterback is playing. And so you develop a plan at the snap, before the snap, I say, as far as what's your primary move, what's going to be your counter move. And then the really good ones start to develop a setup to the primary move, and then they had a counter move. So you come in with a plan of how you want to attack the tackle in case, option A doesn't work, here's option B. And for me, I think he just comes off the ball and tries to, wing it, and that does not get it in the NFL. So at least finding out a couple moves that you really like and that you can really develop. And then it's also getting your body used to leaning around that edge, because really the lean is the finisher to everything. No matter if you long arm stab and then rip and lean, no matter if you forklift the arms, rip and lean, if you swim, you gotta lean around the corner. Like, you always gotta lean to stay on that tight path to the quarterback. So I think working on his pass rush tools is going to be a big thing for him, but I like his run game so far. So maybe not in love with him as other people are, but as far as a piece of clay to mold, that is an intriguing one. And then as far as a guy that I like Joe Jackson out of Miami. And I don't know if there was some injury talk or some off the field issues, but I know he had some hype coming into this year that has kind of died down. But I would say I liked him. He's like a little watered down version of Cleveland Farrell, to be honest. So, I think he does everything that Cleveland does, just not as polished. And he doesn't have as advanced hand technique as Cleveland, is what I would say. But everything else, even the leadership on that Miami D-line, I think goes to Joe Jackson. He definitely has the frame and the body. He has the movement skills to stand up. He's definitely good on the edge. I would say the only thing is that he runs a little hot and cold with his pass rush. There's times where I saw really, really good pass rush out of him. And then there's times where I think he just wasn't trying. So I think he definitely has the ability to lean and to make plays on the edge. I just think he got to be more consistent with it. So Joe Jackson out of Miami is definitely one that I want to look out for. All right, so time to move over to the real grade for the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland has been rebuilding, and as you can see, they got a lot of picks. We got 14 picks, so let's go down the list. We got number 1, Corey Coleman out of Baylor. No longer with the team, bounced around a few teams now in the free agency. We got Emmanuel Ogbah out of Oklahoma State, still with the team and been starting on and off for the team since day one. Carl Nassib from Penn State was starting. He is now with the Tampa Bay Bucks. He was with the team up until this year. Sean Coleman from Auburn, who started all of his second year and now is with the San Francisco 49ers. Cody Kessler, who had a little run as a starter, who is now with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Joe Schubert from Wisconsin. He's a starter for the Browns, one of the better players. Ricardo Lewis was now on the active roster this year, so kind of out of the league. Derek Kendrick, a rotational player for the Browns. Seth DeValve moved to tight ends, kind of a rotational guy. Jordan Payton out of the league, didn't really make it. Spencer Drago also started some games early on, now out of the league. You got Rashard Higgins, who is a third receiver for them and still there. You got Trey Caldwell, who's out of the league, and Scooby Wright, who didn't even make it with the team, went to the Cardinals, and now he's out of the league. So, 14 players. Out of the 14 players, I believe you have 5 still on the team. And out of the 5, I would say 3 safely start. Schubert definitely starts, Emmanuel Ogbah. And then I would say Rashard Higgins is in that starting group of receivers. He's not the number 1 or 2, but I think he's in there. And as the tight end, he plays, but I wouldn't say he's their number 1 starter. So I would say 3 safe starters out of that 5. So when you got these many picks, you got a lot more chances to hit, but a lot more chances to miss. My issue comes with your first 5 picks are all in the first 3 rounds. And out of your first 5 picks, you only got 1 player still on the team. So that really hurts you, especially when your number 1 top 20 pick isn't on the team. You got a starting linebacker in the 4th round. That's pretty good. A contributing receiver in the 5th round. That's pretty good. But I don't think it washes away missing on all 3 of your 3rd round picks and your 1st round picks. So as far as this grade, I'm going to give it a D+. Give it a D+. All right, so go to the comment section. Let me know what you think about the Cleveland Browns draft. Let me know what you think about these defensive ends. Anyone in particular that you're excited about or got a question about. Thumbs up, subscribe, share it around, get the conversation started. And thank you for listening.